Hey, Josh, it's Emily. I know it's been a year since I've talked to you about the things of God, and, actually probably longer than that, huh? Well, anyways, for that time, I didn't just do nothing. I thought a lot. I pondered a lot on the stuff you said. Some of it got into my head, bothered me for a long time. You know what? I took a class in logic, and I loved it. I got an A in it, not to brag or anything, but I really enjoyed it. And so I learned not to get so emotionally upset and things like that when it comes to arguing, debating and things like that. So, I mean, at first, the reason why I got upset was because I was very new in the faith. I had just gotten saved, and it was drastic. It was something huge in my life, and I just didn't understand it fully. But I think that God put you in my life to show me what I believe in a way, because remember you were talking to me about the age of the earth, and I didn't even know any of that stuff when I first got saved. You were talking about how, creationists believe that the earth is something like 4,000 years old. I'm like, really? I didn't know that. I was in theater class that one time. But this is, I'm just gonna refute this, not refute, I don't know, just answer, because you ask a lot of questions and they all go unanswered, and they're pretty good questions actually, and they took me a little while to actually get all this information together and answer back. So just thanks for your questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some of them, or at least give you my, what I think about it. So, okay, so the first thing that you mentioned was Genesis and how it's literal or metaphorical. And I'll just give you the reasons why I think it's literal. So Genesis chapter 1 is the foundation for the rest of the book, which the rest of the book generally reflects literal history besides the poetry accounts, which I'm going to get to in a second. Because Genesis chapter 1 is the whole foundation for the rest of the book, and the rest of the book is historical. The account of the Jews and Moses and all that stuff, that's all historical stuff. Then Genesis logically must be historical, or else it wouldn't make any sense. Okay, so the second reason why is the recognizable traits of Hebrew poetry, which contain metaphors, are absent. It's not a poetic account, Genesis. It's not poetic, and it doesn't contain metaphors like in Psalms and Proverbs. So that's that. It's not poetic, so I don't think it'd be metaphorical. The New Testament documents, including the testimony of Christ, regard Moses' creation account to have taken place literally. Matthew 19:3-8, which I'll just read to you. Some Pharisees came to Jesus to test him. They asked, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? Haven't you read," he replied, "that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and they'll become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God joined together, let not man separate." So basically Christ grounds the legitimacy, that word's always tough, of the marriage covenant upon the creation record. He further argued that the creation of Adam and Eve was at the beginning of creation. So basically he uses Genesis as a basis for argument in a literal way. He doesn't use it in a metaphorical way. So that's another reason why I believe it's literal. Okay, so one thing that you said, and I'm just going to repeat it verbatim. If God is all-knowing, and he knew that man would fail, and he went along with his plan regardless, that makes it entirely his fault. That's just what you said. Okay. 1 second. You said that God knew that man would fail. Half of that's true. God knew it would happen, but man did not fail. They sinned against God. There's a difference, a significant difference. This changes the whole argument, because you have an example about something you make that will fail, and yet man did not fail. They did precisely what God already knew would happen. That's not failing, that's God's hand. Yet you lack to notice that God would have killed them, could have killed them right then and there, but the fact that he didn't reveals his mercy and his grace. But that's another story. God knew that Satan would rebel and that Adam and Eve would sin in the Garden of Eden. With that knowledge, God still created Lucifer and Adam and Eve, because creating them and ordaining the fall was part of his sovereign plan to manifest his glory in all its fullness. Even though the fall was foreknown and foreordained, our freedom in making choices is not violated, because our free choices are the means by which God's will is carried out. I hope that makes sense, because some of this is hard for people to grasp, even myself. That sounded really arrogant, sorry. Okay, so, therefore, it is not God's fault that we sinned, although God allowed it to happen. This doesn't mean that it's God's responsibility that we sinned. He specifically told Adam and Eve not to eat of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and they did anyways. That is when sin entered into the world, and just as God said, "You shall surely die," death entered into the world as well. And then you said, if he created us, and then he put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and we had no knowledge of good and evil, then how could we be held responsible for believing a talking snake? Which is a pretty loaded question, and I intend to give a loaded answer. God put Satan there in order to have Adam and Eve make the choice, obedience or rebellion. And even Adam chose to rebel. You say that Adam and Eve didn't know good from evil, so how could it be their fault? You know, they perhaps didn't know good from evil, but they sure understood the language God was speaking to them when he said, "You will surely die." That's enough for me. I have never eaten a snakeberry just because I heard rumors that it would harm you. I'm not about to find out. Now, if sin hadn't fallen upon man yet, and God was with Adam and Eve, and God told them not to eat of the fruit or else they would die. God told them, not people, God. Okay, so he told them not to eat of the fruit or they'll die. And they did it anyways. It's pretty bold of them, to be honest. That's not even a general knowledge of good and evil. God told them the answer, and he told them what not to do. They did it regardless. It is therefore their fault. God gave man free will, and he gave them specific instructions. God tested it by placing the snake in the garden, and they didn't fail, but they fell into sin. And God made a way for man to be reconciled through his Son. The whole purpose of creation is for God's Son to be given glory. Just like you need a night sky in order to see the stars, so that is why sin is in the world, in order to be able to see perfect righteousness in all its glory, and to follow after that righteousness with your whole heart. Okay. And another thing that you said was the snake and it not being Satan. Which I read it, and nowhere does it really say that the snake is Satan, but I do have further explanation. Satan's called a serpent not once but twice in the book of Revelation, Revelation 12:9 and Revelation 12:15, and that's combined with Paul's words in 2 Corinthians 11:13. So I'm just going to read those off to you. Revelation 12:9. So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Revelation 12:15. He seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. And that combines with Paul's account in 2 Corinthians 11:3. He said, "But I am afraid that just as Eve was deceived by the serpent's cunning, your minds may somehow be led astray from your sincere and pure devotion to Christ." So those are just comparisons. Okay. And another thing that you mentioned was God being surprised when Adam and Eve sinned. And you said, why would God be surprised if he already knew about everything and whatnot? So I'm just going to address that, which I'm going to just read the actual account in Genesis. Genesis 3:8-13. This is what I think you're talking about anyways. Just let me know if it's wrong. And the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man. Where are you? He answered. I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. That's what Adam said. Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? The man said, The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree, and I ate it. Then the Lord God said to the woman, What is this you have done? The woman said, The serpent deceived me, and I ate. So in this account, God was not at all surprised. The only thing that would show surprise to this is the fact that God asked, Where are you? I mean, this doesn't show surprise. It just raises another question that I'm just going to address. Just because God asked, Where are you, doesn't mean that God didn't know something. Not at all. God can easily ask a question to which someone can easily ask a question to which they know the answer. Usually the reason to do this is to point something out or to teach somebody something. Obviously, Adam and Eve sinned. God asked Adam, Where are you? And where was Adam? He was hiding from God. Adam's sin had destroyed his fellowship with the Lord. That's the main point. It's not that he didn't know where Adam was, it's just that they were no longer in fellowship anymore. They were no longer close, like connected, you know what I mean? There's a disconnect now. So God knew this, and he was pointing it out to Adam. It's a question that we need to ask ourselves, where am I? And then, that's not for you, obviously, because you're an atheist, but I ask myself all the time, am I in fellowship with God or rebellion against him in what I'm doing? But, of course, that's another story for maybe another time. But, I just wanted to say, I've learned a lot. Just comment me, or write back or whatever, or video back, any objections or questions or refutations, and I'd be glad to answer them. Not out of utter emotion either, and anger and madness, just out of truth. So, alright, see ya.